Resolution number 91, amending the rules of order to prohibit memorializing resolutions.
Legislator Maloney.
He's actually asking for Maloney up there.
Oh, you asked for legislator.
Were you asking for legislator?
I was. No, actually, I gotta go down there.
He's gonna speak.
I like it back here.
He wants to sit by me.
That's right.
Legislator Rock.
Thank you very much. I want to talk about some things that I heard tonight during public comment. One speaker said that we want the most accessible democracy, and somehow memorializing resolutions bring us the most accessible democracy. I don't know about everybody in this room who's still here. Many have left. I'm sure they've got to go to work tomorrow. But it looks pretty darn accessible to me when you've got more than 50 speakers, well more than 50 speakers, to come and talk to us in public comment. Not just about memorializing resolutions, but also about our county business as well. I've heard about new ideas, and memorializing resolutions are the only mechanism to bring new ideas to this body. Well, I can tell you that my constituents call me on the phone and email me and stop me in the supermarket and on the street at the local Stewart's where, if I go in for a cup of coffee, I'm probably coming out an hour and a half later, and bring me new ideas there. So it doesn't just come in the form of memorializing resolution debate. I heard the word stifle used tonight. I believe that as long as the speakers stayed within the guidelines, and many did, there was no stifling of public comment this evening. In fact, we've had an enormous amount of public comment this evening. The public comment this evening will probably exceed the time of our meeting, the time of our debate, by at least twice the amount. I've heard about expediency, and that's been the argument that's been used to describe why some legislators are doing this. To me, it's not about expediency. I've always said, and I will continue to say, that I will stay here all night to do our business, to do the business of the county, to do the business of the taxpayers of Ulster County, but I do not want to stay in this room all night to do the business of the House of Representatives, or the U.S. Senate, or the New York State Senate, or the New York State Assembly. That's not what we're here to do. I've heard it's undemocratic. Well, I don't believe that it's undemocratic, as we still have petitions and letters, and I promised somebody in this room tonight that while petitions and letters are not 100% the same as memorializing resolutions, I believe that they can accomplish the same goal. I've heard that it's unconstitutional. It's certainly not unconstitutional for us to change our rules. And I've heard the word ignored. And when I heard a speaker say that we are ignoring the public, that really cut me to my core, because we do not ignore the public. I know I don't. I represent the 13th district of the legislature, which encompasses the Hamlet of Walk Hill and the town of Shongum and the greater Hamlet area. We represent our districts, and tonight we've listened to 2 hours of public comment. To call what happened here this evening ignoring, I think, is disrespectful to this very body. I have been against this ban for many years, many times, but there's always a tipping point. There's always a point of no return. I believe we as a body have reached the point of no return and gone beyond it when it comes to these memorializing resolutions. And as my good friend on my right here, Legislator Richard Parody, the parody on the right, if you will, had said at Laws and Rules a couple of months ago, I think that 6 months after this rule change takes effect, many legislators in this body, a vast majority of them, are going to wish we had done this years ago. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Legislator Berkey.
Thank you. I listened earlier to the discussion about the fire center, and at that time wanted to say something which I think is relevant now to this question of memorializing resolutions. And I want to speak from my experience as an urban planner, which is that when we work, at least in the community, the first thing we do is go to the stakeholders, to a whole wide range of stakeholders, to see what impact any type of project or plan might have on them. And when we take it slowly and we take it carefully, we usually succeed in having a much better project and a much better outcome. And I believe that the memorializing resolutions have a very similar effect, which is that they allow us, first of all, there's a 30-day waiting period, and we're going through a process in which we do open it up by going through committee, whether people attend or not. And we are debating it amongst ourselves, whether debating is easy or hard. And it's good that we are learning together through that debate. That's significant. And that's something the public can participate in. And I'm sorry, I beg to differ with you about the idea that these people are showing up because we are giving them a great opportunity to speak. They're showing up because we are considering sending a message to the public that we do not want to learn together through debate. So I, of course, am opposing this resolution. And I also just want to raise another separate point, which is that our leader, Hector, and our very capable staff compiled the list of 109 resolutions that were passed mostly with significant bipartisan support over the last 11 years. And if you go through them, you'll see that many of them support economic development initiatives, public safety initiatives, a whole range of things that are very beneficial to the community, whether it was film tax credits that are already beginning to see an effect, or whether it was a Pilgrim pipeline that none of us support, or at least I think none of us support because we know it won't benefit us directly. And we know that it might, in fact, be very detrimental to us. And there's a whole range of things. Why, not to mention, by the way, supporting grant proposals that we know are beneficial to our communities. Why would we want to stop using that tool? It is a very valuable one. It allows us to petition other levels of government and to speak as one voice with our communities in the region. So I just want to thank you all for listening, and I really hope that you will take a second glance at the ideas that were brought here tonight by the public that came out because they do not want to see us curtail this particular, or abridge, as the Constitution says, this right to petition other governments. Thank you.
Legislator Litz.
Can't hear.
Legislator Litz?
No, he's talking, but we can't.
Okay, so we'll go to Legislator Belfilio now. Oh, there we go. Legislator Litz.
I had my mute button. I wish I could eloquently speak as well as my esteemed colleagues Craig Lopez and Ken Ronk on this issue. But a few months ago, when we were debating memorializing resolutions, it was brought to my attention that we spent a little over 2 hours in discussion of 2 memorializing resolutions, but we spent just slightly over 3 minutes to spend over $15 million worth of county funds on various projects and contracts. I wish we would spend the amount of time on the issues, funding, and necessary work of the county as we do, even if 10% of the time, that we do on memorializing resolutions, which tend to be issues that our body cannot legislate upon, yet we are not curtailing anyone's rights by the Constitution of free speech or to be heard. Anyone could come to the Ulster County Legislative Chambers and be heard on any subject. we're not curtailing that, whether we pass this or do not pass this resolution. People always are afforded the opportunity to speak to their elected representatives, but they should be speaking to their elected representatives that can deal with the issues at hand, not memorializing issues that cannot be dealt by the body they're speaking to. Enough said.
Legislator Belfield.
I thought long and hard about this ban because a couple of years ago it came up and I was definitely not in favor of it. I brought forth memorializing resolutions myself last year. The memorializing resolutions I brought forth were in support of bills in the New York State Senate and Assembly on dyslexia awareness. I brought forth a sober home regulation bill that kind of came out of our UCAN meetings that was sorely needed in the state. And this year, I've found that, well, I've known this all along, governing isn't about politics. And a lot of these memorializing resolutions this year are totally about politics, and I'll never change my mind about it. That's not what they're there for. They're there to help our constituents. They're there to help a kid who's misdiagnosed with a learning disorder instead of dyslexia and has an IEP for the rest of his life, and he's branded as stupid. It's about helping people in recovery get into a sober home and get better and not worse. It's not about a definitive polarizing issue that throws national politics into our local government, and in such a way that is just political. And I don't want anything to do with that. I want to help people, and I want to help people with actions, and memorializing resolutions don't do that. And by the way, both of my memorializing resolutions, you all voted unanimously for, and in September, I brought them to the New York State Association of Towns, my committee, full of hope, and they didn't want anything to do with those resolutions. Nothing. They looked at them, they didn't even put them on the schedule. They pushed them aside and said, maybe we'll look at them 6 months from now when we go back.
They got him a white jacket.
What's that?
And they got him a white jacket.
Yeah, they got me a white jacket, you know.
Chair.
And I had people, professionals to back me up at that committee meeting. So to me, it left a bad taste in my mouth. This year's memorializing resolutions left a bad taste, political bad taste. It's not the way to govern, not by political bullying. The way to govern is to get things done, to do it for the right reasons. So I'm a yes.
Legislator Parity. All right, Legislator Bartels would like to go. Ouch.
I want to begin by respectfully disagreeing with my colleague, Legislator Belfield. I think memorializing resolutions are a way to help our constituents. They are one way to be the voice of our constituents. And because we have a political bad taste in our mouths about any particular memorializing resolution or series of memorializing resolutions, I don't think is reason enough to silence the possibility of all. The fact that this body, the majority of this body, is likely to take action tonight that will choose to remove one tool that we have as legislators is very disheartening to me. And with respect to what the chair said earlier, I'm not convinced that it is constitutional. It, to me, is inarguable that we are not silencing the public, because the public, as of now, until we make a different rule, right now the public still can come and speak on any subject. But after tonight, if this passes, I, as a legislator, or any one of us individually, will not be allowed to speak on the floor on certain subjects. And that's a fact. That's what's before us now. I hope that my colleagues will reconsider. I know that memorializing resolutions, because they focus the debate, sometimes result in long meetings where we have the privilege of listening to our impassioned public. And I consider it a privilege to hear the public come here and to spend 2, 4, however many hours it is that we get to listen to people come before us and tell us what they think. And I think that's one of my most important duties as a legislator. Thank you.
You want to stay up there?
Thank you, Chairman. This must be Throwback Tuesday to see Chairman Tarantine in the legislative chambers, right? Legislator Donaldson? All right, you did very well up there. All right, I'm just going to be brief. I'm supportive of this resolution, and I will tell you, we had 53 speakers tonight. A lot of communities only allow public comment on resolutions that are to be voted on that night. We don't do that. We allow folks to come up here to speak about anything. We also, we don't they make you wait till the end of the meeting to talk about other subjects. We don't do that. I'm also going to say, I've spoken to a dozen of my constituents that have been given misleading information about this memorializing resolution ban. Every single person I've spoken to at the end of the phone conversation, 100% has agreed that there's much better use of our time in doing county business. When they go in the booth in November to vote for their county legislator, they expect that person to do county business. And they don't expect us to do town business, and they don't expect us to do federal and state business. We have a $350 million budget. We're all part-timers, and we're extremely busy. We sit on nonprofit boards, we coach Little League. There's very few retired people here. Most of us are still all working. So if with a $350 million budget, we certainly need to devote our times to the budget. And also I'm going to say, in my years here, I think I've got about 4 memorializing resolutions from towns. Maybe one from Saugerties, one from Olive once. And you know why town boards don't do it? Because they're busy doing town business. Go to your town boards and tell your town boards to start doing memorializing resolutions. And you know what? They're not going to do them because they don't have the time. They're too busy doing town business. Just like we need to concentrate on county business. And this resolution doesn't ban memorializing resolutions. It doesn't ban us meeting with federal and state representatives. It doesn't ban me or any legislator from writing a resolution and having others sign on to it and sending it out to the proper representatives and authorities. There is no silencing the public. It is fake, it's fear-mongering, it's just not happening. You have all our phone numbers, our cell numbers, our email addresses are on the website. You can call us. We will go to meetings with you. We'll sign letters for you. We'll work with other reps for you. It doesn't need to be used as a tool that unfortunately some legislators over the years have used it to further their political ambition, to beat the drums to their base, to get them out to say that, you know, I want to get my name out there. Yeah, that's what this is going to do to a degree. But for those of you that have come up to say that we don't care about democracy, go home and talk to my wife and see how many times I'm on my cell phone at 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. I'm at my son's baseball game tonight at Rondout on the cell phone talking to constituents. No, none of us are looking to stifle democracy, but we have an obligation to our constituents to do county business. And that's what we need to do here. So I think once this resolution is passed, which I'm confident it's going to pass, this will be a better county government, and we will do our job, and when the people pull their lever for this body, members of this body, they're going to know they're coming up here and they're dedicating their time to the business we need to do. So, thank you.
Bruce?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are we on? Yeah, we are. So, I was handed a list here, 192 memorializing resolutions that have been put up since April 2006. That's the last 11 years of the legislature. I'll give this to the press corps for their inspection. Out of those 192 memorializing resolutions, 109 passed, as Legislator Berkey said, meaning that 83 were either withdrawn by the sponsor or they failed. in my 40 months as a legislator, 7 of those memorializing resolutions were put up by myself. Now, out of those 7 memorializing resolutions, I had 3 that passed, including the one tonight. I actually withdrew 4 of my memorializing resolutions, 2 of which, because one had failed in the state Senate, excuse me, in the state, in the state Senate, did not have a co-sponsor bill in the state assembly. The second bill had already passed for the testing, for funding of testing of the presence of lead in drinking water in schools in New York State. It had already passed, so it was a moot point for me to still have it on the agenda for that evening. 2 other memorializing resolutions I put up, I also withdrew them as a sponsor because I knew I did not have the votes for them to pass. Okay, I have never put one partisan word in any of the 7 memorializing resolutions that I have authored. I've written every single word of them myself, pretty much. I did 99% of the research on them myself. I did not exhaust the resources of the staff in here. I know some of the criticisms have been, I've heard in the Laws and Rules Committee, it was brought up by the sponsor that legislators are lazy who put up memorializing resolutions. I mean, sometimes it is true that memorializing resolutions perhaps are vague, they lack the detail, they aren't written as well as what some legislators would like to see, but we shouldn't necessarily just focus on the aspects of memorializing resolutions that divide us as a legislature. We should look at the elements of memorializing resolutions that bring us together. 109 out of 192 passed. I want to thank my fellow legislator, Dean Fabiano, who just stepped out of the room, because without his sponsorship and his passionate speech that he delivered to the Republican caucus last week, my resolution would have passed, but he got me an extra 8 votes in the Republican caucus, so I thank him for that. But to say that it's not our job to do the business of legislators in Albany or in Washington, D.C., is looking at it in a very narrow light, because the reality is we're faced with a situation today where in Washington, D.C., we have legislators who are supposed to be full-time legislators in Congress, in the House of Representatives, in the Senate, where essentially they end up being part-time fundraisers, part-time campaigners, part-time commuters, and part-time legislators. They essentially do not have the time to actually examine on a deep level the problems that are plaguing this country. Most of them essentially are as good as the top 8 that's in their office. Part-time legislators like us, if we have an opportunity to come up with an idea, if we can see something that can be improved upon, perhaps it can lead to something like what legislator Susan Zimmett brought up tonight, where she was able to have rail cars marked if there's radioactive material that are passing through communities on commercial freight lines. It is...
Yeah.
I haven't called 5 minutes.
This is, let him go because there's a perfect reason why it should be banned.
I think it would be a detriment. I think it would be a detriment to this legislative body if we were to ban memorializing resolutions, because it stifles the creativity and our ability to call attention to problems that plague society, to make suggestions to Albany and down to Washington, D.C., where we can make a change, make society better, and make government work better and improve people's lives. I'm voting yes. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Now, that's your vote. That's your vote. You voted no. Hey, you no. Go on. You're a no.
So, I would like to respond. I would like to respond to a few things I'm hearing in the room. First of all, if we're going to talk about rule changes, one of the rules that we should really uphold, and I'm frankly embarrassed, although so many people have left, that there's been name-calling, that there's been disparaging remarks toward our colleagues during this session. It's not the first time I've seen it happen, and if we're really going to work together and learn through debate, we need to stop doing this, because I am not proud to serve among people who don't treat each other with respect. Now, mentioned that a few bad apples or perhaps a few very political resolutions came through. Well, that's just the nature of making sausage. I don't think we should punish ourselves by letting the tail wag the dog. We certainly don't want to go down the slippery slope, sorry for all the mixed metaphors, of emulating counties that give people even less of an opportunity to exercise democratic process. So, because I have visitors from other counties, colleagues, counterparts, who tell me that we're lucky in Ulster County, that we have the level of discourse that we have. And I think it's what sends the message that this is a welcoming place for people like Cale, who is one of the most active economic developers in the community, Cale Capishillan over there, who spoke very eloquently about what kind of message we are sending to people who want to live well and participate in the quality of life here. And finally, I just want to talk for one moment about this question of 3 minutes and millions of dollars versus 2 hours and memorializing resolutions. Well, when we make the budget, we review very carefully in committee a lot of things that then move very quickly through the floor. So what? That's part of the budget making process, and then we work together, hopefully, very closely with department heads and deputy county executives to understand, and on our committees, to understand what the spending is about. So if we're voting on it, it's because we've done our due diligence and done our homework. But tonight, when we tried to get more information about a fire center, not because we oppose fire centers, because we all know that's important for safety, but because we hadn't even had even a week to do the due diligence, and we need a waiting period, and we need to learn about it. Suddenly, that's too much time. So I would like to see us consider how we would really have a more transparent process for being able to do the kind of due diligence that we deserve to do and empower ourselves as a legislature to ask these questions of people who are making plans without our knowledge. This is our role as a legislature. Republican and Democrat, we should work together to make very careful decisions about spending. And so I would really like us to consider that if we're going to debate and learn together through debate, let's be transparent also about the spending decisions that we're rushing to make when we haven't really had an opportunity because it hasn't been brought to us early enough and enough time for us to examine carefully. Thank you.
I just want to say that while we are not silencing the public, and that's very important, I think we are silencing ourselves. There have been a lot of these resolutions that were passed unanimously. I think down the road, people are going to look, for example, at a segmented rail trail and say, what were they thinking? And I think they're going to say the same thing about ending memorializing resolutions. What were they thinking?
Legislator Abner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise to respectfully oppose the ban on memorializing resolutions. I oppose it simply for the fact that I believe we should be having these discussions and these debates about issues that are very obvious in their impact on our county and the residents that we represent. But also, and again, I'm new here. This is my first term. But here you quickly learn about your history here in the Ulster County Legislature. And the history is very clear when it comes to memorializing resolutions. The packet shows that there's been hundreds of memorializing resolutions from Republicans and Democrats, oftentimes Republicans and Democrats alike. I've been proud to support bipartisan memorializing resolutions. But also, going through this list, I mean, there's some really tough issues in here. Just last month, in the majority address, there was reference to the support of a memorializing resolution, one that I respected my colleague for bringing to the floor, but by no means was easy for me to vote no against. It was a tough call, but we were elected here to make tough calls on all issues. We don't get to pick and choose our issues, or the issues of the time. The chairman might remember when the majority had a memorializing resolution where they even rented out UPAC so that more residents would have the ability to have input. And that's because they are important. And to say that for some reason they get in the way of our work, another one of the many history lessons I've had since being here is the tales of this legislature going far into the early morning. So I think that most of us would agree that we're pretty efficient these days. And also I think it's frankly insulting to the work this legislature does, because I know my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, whether it's in standing committees, whether it's in the many subcommittees and task force we serve on, whether it's in caucuses. I know our caucuses go very late. I mean, we're Democrats, we argue a lot, but they go very, very late. And I invite the public to attend all those meetings, because that's where a lot of this really good debate comes in hand. Just this month, the Democratic caucus laid aside 5 contracts because we wanted more information. The process is happening. It just doesn't always happen directly on this floor, because we do take our due diligence through committee processes, through subcommittee processes, through caucuses. So I know that both my colleagues on this side and on that side are all working hard. And again, we're not stymieing our progress. Further, they've been called political grandstanding recently. But I know that, I mean, I don't know how grand it is, but I was given this stand by the people of Ulster County, and month after month after month, 3 months in a row, people have poured into this chamber concerned about the fact that we were getting rid of this process. And I think that it's only right that we actually listen to these people and not be so concerned about what work is happening in this small little corridor on this floor, but what the people want outside, what these folks want that are here to 11 o'clock. So with that, I will vote no. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
For allowing me to speak for the second time. You know, I've come to ask myself over the past few months, when was it that I changed my mind on this? Because I voted against this, as Legislator Rich Parity could back me up on, because he's proposed it in the past several times. You know, when did I change my mind? And I think the moment that I changed my mind was when members of the other caucus, members of the Democratic caucus, were unwilling to alter one of the memorializing resolutions to condemn hate speech against all people and to express solidarity with all people, because they said that we could only be against hate speech against a certain subsection of the county. And that was when memorializing resolutions went from a tool for this body to use to a tool for politics. And you know, in the future, you know, this is an olive branch to my colleagues on the other side. In the future, I may be open to having these resolutions come back into our body, but it would take some specific requirements. There would have to be a supermajority signed on to the resolution, because what we've heard a lot of on the other side is, you know, there are all these bipartisan resolutions supported by the whole body, supported by Republicans and Democrats. Well, then why don't we put our money where our mouth is, and if we're really not doing politics, let's take the politics out of it and only pass bipartisan memorializing resolutions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
With all due respect, Mr. Chairman, I find your remarks a little absurd. The very idea that because someone didn't want to change a resolution to fit your needs, and therefore it was not valuable, then you have the right, as every other legislator, to vote no on that. That's part of the legislative process. Now, when we take a look at memorializing resolutions, you know, there are a lot of them that tend to be political in nature, and will have no effect. You know, or is Grace Slick from Jefferson Airplane, to paraphrase her, doesn't mean crap to a tree. But having said that, there are other resolutions that do mean something. And besides that, politics is in the eye of the beholder. To one, it may be politics. To another, it may be a call to action. Now, I have been the only the only positions that I've ever taken here where I have actually been physically threatened was over memorializing resolutions. 2 different memorializing, or, that came out of the Republican caucus at the time, what I would refer to as right-wing memorializing resolutions. I was a no on them, and I spoke adamantly against them, and I was actually physically threatened, not by any member here, I probably would have needed them, but by someone else, and I was threatened on actually 2 different occasions on my stand on a memorializing resolution. So I mean, I could see some of your argument that, oh geez, they take up time, and they do polarize people from time to time. But on the other hand, it brings people out to participate in their democracy. And many people, I mean, I taught government in high school for 28 years. And one of the things that you find is students knew a lot about their federal government, but decent about their state government, but knew virtually nothing about their local governments. And many people, as they age, they still don't. They may know a little bit because they may go to a town board meeting because they're mad about their taxes or whatever. But by these memorializing resolutions, people understand the national issues and they have passion on them, and they come out. And the idea that they coming out, it brings their ears out to listen to other things that we're talking about. I mean, I wish that some people, once they come out, they stay involved. And that's a plus. I know I've seen people in here that they came out because of memorialized resolution, and next thing you know, you see them at all the meetings. They start showing up at the meetings. That is a good thing. The more people that show up, the better. Even if you don't like them, it's still better. And I wish they would have shown up on other times. I wish maybe if we had some memorializing resolutions, maybe the public would have showed up in force against the privatization of Golden Hill or against the privatization of our mental health that we did. Maybe we could have stopped that, but that wasn't done. So I will vote no on this. I don't think in the end it serves us well.
Mr. Chair.
I'm going to be very brief. We can't hear it. Hello? I just want to correct one thing that was said about when we took 3 minutes to spend $22 million, and a legislator said that was all done at budget time. That's incorrect. Those were capital projects. We didn't have bids for them back in November and December when we were doing the budget. They were in the capital plan with no monies associated with them. So we did spend $22 million in capital projects where bids had just been opened up in the last couple of weeks. So that was incorrect. And I'd also like to say, and I do appreciate everybody coming out. I mean, this is really good, and people can disagree and still respect how everybody feels in the process. But I'd like to say, if we went by how many people came out on an issue, there would be trains going from Kingston to Bel Air, because the train people were here 5 or 10 to 1 over the trail people, but only 6 people voted for the trail folks tonight. So it's great to get up and say that, but unless you're going to live by that on every resolution, it's kind of doesn't make any sense. So thank you, Chairman. Call the question.
Legislator, there have been a lot of people who have had the opportunity to speak tonight. There's a couple people who haven't spoken. Let's let them speak. Legislator Parity, John Parity.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have to rise and chat a little bit about what's gone on. Over the years, when Rob and Rich got elected here 9 or 10 years ago, and a little before that when I was watching what was going on, I thought these memorializing resolutions were silly. And back then I realized it was a streak of indolence around a lot of legislators, because it takes work to draw up a resolution, go to all of your colleagues and chat with them, bring residents in from the community to talk about it, and then bring it yourself or bring it with your colleagues to the legislature, whether it's the state or the federal government, and lobby for it. Now, what bothers me as much as anything today is the misinformation that's been spread around. I got this piece of paper here talking about the point of what we're doing so terrible in memorializing resolutions. And I'm going to go over it if I can for a minute, because it's really fraudulent. I mean, it talks, for instance, about Congress has memorializing resolutions. Congressman has a sense of the House or a sense of the Senate resolution. All they talk about are national issues like expressing a sense of the House of Representatives regarding trafficking in illicit fentanyl into the United States from Mexico and China. Or expressing the sense of the House of Representatives that Iran should immediately release the 3 United States citizens that it holds, as well as provide all known information on any United States citizen that have disappeared within its borders. They don't allow the public to come in. They talk about a national issue, not what we're talking about. I can even escape from them when they want to talk. I mean, I always like to say I go to the bathroom and there's no window to climb out. So they just wait for me. I got a nice little letter from a young lady, Tosi, T-O-C-C-I, telling me that her concerns about this resolution, and I really enjoyed it and liked it. And she said, a letter cannot replace, because she knew that I said, you can go out and get signatures, cannot replace the testimony of your citizens. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. So I went and did some research. And here I have a very good friend of mine. It's just an example of how open and above board we are. My good friend Kathy Nolan in the last few years spoke over 30 times to this body on all sorts of issues. No censorship. And that's the word in the front page of this. Censorship. Just not true. And it talks about how the Declaration of Independence was a memorializing resolution. That is so unfair, untrue, and misrepresentative. The people that signed the Declaration of Independence, remember John Hancock in the big letters? They were signing their death warrant. Because had they lost, they couldn't say, oh, I was really against it. No, you signed it here. Had they lost, the next words they would have heard was, hang him, it'll teach him a lesson. So, I think in my own mind, and I could go on and on about some of the other absolute fabrications in this thing. But what blew my mind was a few months ago, or whenever it was, when this body, and I don't care who the President of the United States is in particular, but when this body cavalierly voted against the Trans-Pacific Trade Pact, and in particular some parts of it, and I asked some folks who sponsored it, what parts were you opposed to? It's like a deer in the headlight, and if you ever hit a deer in the headlight, you know they look right at you when you run into them. So here we are, the Ulster County Legislature, voting against the Trans-Pacific Pipeline that a President of the United States and world leaders, world business people, spent 7 years negotiating. 7 years. And we just decide one night we're going to vote against it. And you know, going back to the sense of the House of Representatives and the House and sense of the Senate, check it out. It very specifically says their political resolutions used to embarrass one side or the other. So I think these things don't have to go away. Do you know, last year, or a year and a half ago maybe, when I was over there, on the scaffolding law, because I don't like these things, so I went out asked the folks to help me draft a resolution on the scaffolding law, and its restrictions and difficulties it brings on for business and labor. And I went around with a bunch of the colleagues and asked them to sign it. But then I brought it to Albany. You know what? I got some response to it. It didn't pass. But I did get some response. And a lawyer for some group called me and said, well, you don't really understand. I go, I understand that. But so it doesn't have to go away. But we can't be so busy that we can't work at it. So when the vote comes, I want to get rid of them.
Legislator Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted a few quick points of clarification. Sometimes when people are making comments when you're speaking, it kind of throws your rhythm off a little bit. When it was discussed before, it was brought up by somebody that's debating for the end of memorializing resolutions. The budget figure that they thought the Ulster County budget was stated as $350 million. We haven't seen a budget of $350 million in my tenure as a legislator. Thanks to County Executive Mike Hine, he's made some cuts, and the budget this year that he delivered us was $324.8 million, and through the deliberative processes in the Ways and Means Committee, we added another $200,000 back on that. It was around an even $325 million. To reiterate the point of Legislator Berkey, we do perform due diligence within committees, and to also piggyback on the point of Legislator Hepner, resolutions are brought back and held off for a month, looking for more information from the county executive's office. So these are things that do happen, and there is due diligence done on the deliberation by the county executive's office through the RFP process, through the research process that they do, where they're trying to get the best deal that they can possibly get for the taxpayers of Ulster County. And when it comes down to us, the objective that the committees and the caucus procedure that everybody hopes for is for everything to be moved into consent. And the reason why things are moved into consent is generally implicit by nature of resolutions being moved into consent is that there's no deliberation and debate. So we can roll through a monthly meeting in like 45 or 50 minutes and be out of here and be on our way home an hour after the meeting started. So with that being said, memorializing resolutions do serve a purpose in here, and it does facilitate positive debate, and good things have come out of them. And I'm voting no on this for clarification, my last point. Thank you.
And to finish the debate, Legislator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the clerk's office for compiling the list of memorializing resolutions.
Lift the mic up.
Can you not hear me? I'm surprised.
The gallery was having some trouble.
Really? Okay. It represents a lot of hard work, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, a lot of different people coming together to advance issues on whether they're local, national, state. We have no problems going through our agenda. As was highlighted earlier, we often come together to put a bunch of different resolutions into consent because we've already done the work in committee, or we've already figured out how we are going to be able to provide the proper oversight. We had 8 resolutions, including this one, that were in non-consent. It wasn't as if somehow memorializing resolutions were weighing us down. But that's okay. This is how the majority is just going to do it, then that's just how it is. We in the minority have only our voice. And more importantly, we have you. And when we go back, don't interrupt because I'm in mid-rant and I'll lose my place. The issue becomes that we are either a voice for our constituents or we are not. We are either going to embrace the idea that we can effectuate change beyond this room or we can't. Now that said, I will gladly admit there are letters, there's other things that we can do. No one said that somehow that all of government's going to end or that somehow our voice will end. However, I will say that resolutions have been a focal point. They have been a way to sort of garner not just comment and interest from the public, but also actual debate here in this room. My goal is not to go home as quickly as possible. Mind you, I don't want to be here any second longer with you guys than I have to be. But that said, my goal is not how quickly I get out of here to go home. My job is to represent my constituency. Now, my constituents are opposed to a memorializing ban, and that's fine. Maybe Kenny's are all for it. So be it. I will say this. This does not end here. This will continue on. I need you guys to continue to come up to Kingston to deliver your comments here at that podium to make us aware of things that are happening.
Please address the chair.
Through the chair to the audience. That said, Mr. Chairman, it is a sad day for this legislature. I see this is where the majority wants to lead us. Well, so be it.
Oh, and Legislator Gerentine to finish the debate.
Because heck, Legislator Rodriguez don't want to go home, I have to talk to you. Is that all right, Hector?
Sure.
Okay.
Listen, Rich, for you, I'll stay. I'll stay all night, Rich.
Legislator Gerentine, please address the chair.
I'm not saying I don't like Hector. I like him, but not that much. But anyway. Disregarding what this resolution does tonight, pass, fail, whatever the case may be, all of us have a job to do. We were elected here by our constituents, our people, and we have a job to do. You should not say, oh, just because we don't have memorializing resolutions anymore, we're going to stop doing our work. We're going to continue to do our work. People are still going to come here on public comment and speak. You're going to get ideas from the public. You're going to talk to your constituents. You're going to get letters. And if you think it's that important, like someone said earlier, get a group of people together, ask the legislative body together, bring it through the committee in different ways, and write letters to our congressmen, our assemblymen, our senators, whatever the case may be, the governor. This does not stop. This does not stop because we are maybe saying tonight we're not going to have any more memorializing resolutions. We still have a job to do, and we have a function to do. And then we owe it to our constituents to do that job. And if you think we shouldn't be doing that job, our voices are still going to be heard. On radio, in public, still going to be heard. Like Ken said before, he went to coffee shops, he goes to the grocery stores. I'm sure all of us go through there, and we hear different people say different things. Take those comments back to the committee and expand on them. You're still going to hear the voices of your constituents, no matter what happens here tonight. So in saying that, vote question.
On the resolution.
We're short yes.
We're a short no with one yes. Legislator John Parody.
The resolution is adopted 13-9.